kind of with the commissions too, you know, encourage Fullbrighters to get in touch with those commissions to, you know, ask those questions that you have about, well, you know, what are you really looking for in country? You know, do that before you start your application as well. Definitely recommend. So what questions do you guys have? Yes, or I'll come up.
I just want to say I'm Mark Sandine and I work with John Denny, so you can put a name with a face. I'm also available for you to chat about your proposals. My email is Sandeen, S-A-N-D-E-E-N, and I'm in a building called Jan Hall on campus, which is part of the east part of the UF Stadium. I'm really glad to see so many of you apply. I'm a former administrator and faculty member at UF and a Fullbrighter myself, so I look forward to talking.
We're going to move forward. Yes, ma'am.
Just a general question. If in my situation, I received a fellowship a few years ago from the AAUW, and I had to do a very similar application process, and I learned a lot in that, having to have everything, you know, all in one page. Now that I'm doing research that's about 5 years later, I'm kind of thinking that I owe a lot to what I wrote then, and so my question is, you know, I made a proposal then, and I fulfilled a lot of it. Is it applicable in this application to kind of mention that and say, you know, here's evidence of my independent thinking.
Absolutely.
I did this much here, but I need to go further. So that would be recommended to go ahead and mention them in particular.
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Thanks.
And that also applies to, you know, anytime your proposal is being evaluated, people are looking, is this a feasible project? If you can demonstrate in any way that you've already accomplished steps A through D or whatever, and you just need to get done the next step, that's an example that you're demonstrating that it's feasible because you've already achieved certain aspects of it.
Good question. Yes, sir.
Is it possible to split the time of a research grant between 2 or more countries?
There are some countries that have multi-country programs. John, I'm going to refer to you because maybe you've seen a lot more of these than I have. It's not typical, but there are some multi-country options available.
I've yet to work with somebody that had a multi-country proposal. They do exist. You have to have a very good reason why you need to go to multiple countries. You have to be accepted by each country, each commission, or each embassy.
So the beginning process would be essentially the same, but there's extra stuff.
Down the road, yeah.
I'd like to follow up on that. If I'm studying supranational identity, and the only really place I can do that is the EU, should I be applying to some sort of a regional organization in Brussels, or should I specifically look at the various countries that I want to do case studies in?
That's
There
one of the
is
examples.
an EU regional grant that you should look at. Absolutely. I think it could take place in any of the EU countries.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies first.
I wasn't sure it was like the point.
Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I just had a quick question. I am a U.S. citizen, but I also have dual citizenship in the country that I'm interested in going to, and I didn't know if I can apply that as a result of that. I have to apply somewhere else.
Depends on the country.
Israel.
Might be an issue.
Dual citizenship is usually a change. He's right, there are some instances where how much time have you spent in this? Fair enough.
Not recently, but
The general idea of Fullbright is to give people an opportunity to go to a country where they haven't spent a lot of time. But don't want to discourage you with your summer.
I would recommend just getting in touch with the program manager for that region. They'll be able to answer that question better than we can. Yes, sir.
Okay, for the CLS.
Yes, right? Yes.
It's a program in Morocco, and having gone there with the year of Arabic, I understand that the people understand what I'm saying. So Because the Arabic is completely different there, so I'm wondering if you learn the MSA, right, or is it kind of mix, or maybe you learn the MSA in class when you go out in the street?
You're going to take a test and you're going to be placed not necessarily in Morocco, so we have lots of 6 locations within the Middle East. So they will place you where they think you're best suited to study the language. So, the countries change as well. Each year is a little bit different. And I encourage you to contact the agency who contracted out to help with this process, pay your professional. Go to that website, you'll be able to play a lot more about Arabic.
Thanks. For you, I went over the preliminary research that you paid for. I have a professor that's on my committee, and I'm wondering if that qualifies for the institutional connection. Affiliation, right? So he's a professor of Morocco.
Yeah, that could work. I mean, it really depends on the nature. Basically, the question was he had already gone abroad, made some connections, paid out of his own pocket even, made some connections abroad, and he was asking if those connections could be used as an affiliation. We're saying absolutely, if it has to do with the project actually.
If we're applying for research grants through the Fullbright and we are awarded grants from other institutions, is there any stipulation that the Fullbright can't be awarded in conjunction with other grants or scholarships?
Which other grants and scholarships?
Like AWIS, American Indian Institute, I can't remember what it stands for. I'm doing South Asia and interested in going to do field work in India. And I may be awarded a language grant for going to study language, but I could be doing research at the same time. So would I be allowed to have both awards, or would I only be allowed to accept Fulbright's award if it was awarded?
That's a really good question.
I believe that you are, and again, it depends on the country. Look at the India country summary and talk to the Indian program.
Just in principle, you can usually, once you're awarded 2 awards, you get the administrators of those 2 programs to talk to each other.
Okay.
And, if Fulbright is for living expenses, basically, and travel. If you have another grant that's for lab equipment, or it's for, hiring research assistants, or it's for maybe language, I don't know exactly how that's working here. But usually you can get them to agree, and sometimes you'll get a reduction on each side on the overlap. But it's a good thing to have 2 awards, and they all recognize that just means that you're getting more recognition, and that they're picking good people and all of that. So it's not a bad thing.
Okay. Thanks.
And I think for specific questions, the program managers know a lot more as well. But that's great.
Back there.
I received a Fulbright in 2007 for my dissertation research, and I'm about to finish, and I wanted to return to the country as either a scholar or a lecturer, and to publish my research in the language in that country. Well, the fact that I've already received a Fulbright, does that disqualify
Is that a
me?
student program or a Fulbright Hayes?
It was a student, yeah.
So if you want to apply for the scholar program, that doesn't.
It won't hurt me?
In fact, it'll be an advantage in any country. In the back of the room, Ed Bogazik is a representative from the scholar program. So you might want to get with him.
Be happy to chat with you afterwards.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, if we're undergraduate students, should we be looking towards getting a master's degree first, or should we find a program that we want to continue on with our master's? Or should we just go ahead and straight out of undergrad?
It really depends on what you want to do. There is emphasis placed on graduating seniors in the Fullbright program, so it really depends on whatever you want to do. There are obviously a lot of students that are working on their masters in the classroom right now, and so you're not disadvantaged in any way. It's up to you.
In fact, as an undergraduate, you're just competing against other undergraduates. You're not be competing with master's level or PhD level candidates in a particular research.
So if our, if we found that we wanted to do a research program, would we then need to publish like a master's thesis or anything?
There's no requirement to Fulbright other than writing a little midterm and final report. No need to pass it on. You're
to like Peru that speaks Spanish, it's a more commonly taught language. Does it benefit you to have some kind of other language training like Quechua or Aymara or anything like that? Is that
Definitely in
something
Peru,
that's-
Quechua would be fantastic to get better in the cap.
Okay, so it'd be worth like, you know, putting in the effort to take a class before I apply or?
Yeah, if you have access to those resources here, that's something that you're stating in that language evaluation, talking about your desire to start taking courses in Quechua. I can't remember the other language.
Aymara.
Yeah, most definitely. Other questions?
And especially if that relates to your project. You know, if you're in the capital city working with international business people, that's one thing. If you're interviewing potato farmers in the Andes, you're going to want to have the Quechua.
See, I'm actually in the city working with people that have migrated into town.
So it's a useful thing.
But a lot of them do speak, I mean, most everybody speaks Spanish, but Quechua is kind of one of those rapport building things. So I don't know, I mean, it's not really essential, but I would like to study it, so.
Rapport building is all programs.
It strengthens your proposal to do that.
Okay, awesome.
Other questions?
This can be before or after the Fullbright. As long as you're currently enrolled in an undergraduate or graduate, when you apply.
Right, just the phone of the year rate.
You could do it summer before you take up a Fullbright award. Take the Fullbright award. You cannot do, I should mention this, a critical language scholarship and a critical language enhancement award in the same year. So you have to apply to one or the other if you're thinking about doing Fullbright.
I will be graduating this semester from the master's program. I'm vocal performance master music.
Yes.
What kind of project that I might do will obviously involve language to a certain degree, wherever I go. What kind of opportunities, I mean, obviously I will not be enrolled in the school, so that program wouldn't be applicable to me. So what kind of opportunities are there?
Well, there are all sorts of project opportunities that you probably have to think for yourself in a lot of cases. But, there are a lot of resources here at the UF people that might be willing to contribute.
I guess I don't know if I stated this before, but you don't have to, eligibility-wise, you don't have to be a current student to receive or to apply for the Fullbright program. You just have to have a bachelor's degree. And so if it's something that you choose to do a couple of years down the road, 5, 6 years down the road, there is no age limit either. I think our oldest Fullbright is like 7 years. So you want to wait a couple of years, maybe not as competitive, but it really depends on the project that you're proposing.
Come talk to me after you're done talking about that.
Cool.
Possible opportunities.
Yeah.
Quite much. Any questions? Yes.
So if we're, like I'm a political science student, and what I'd be interested in researching might I don't know how to say it, like I'd be interested in researching the Kenyan government, but obviously like the Kenyan government would have to approve that research. Like what advice do you have, I guess?
Talk to Jermaine Jones.
Okay.
He's the program manager for that country.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I was kind of wondering, you said that the language requirements differ by country as to how much you need. You said you're also looking for science, technology, and engineers. How does that kind of play out? Because, like, I'm an engineer, for example, but as our undergraduates, we don't really take foreign language, or at least where I went to school, because you want to be the best being an engineer you can be. So, we're taking thermo too, we're taking all sorts of high-tech classes. There's like a lot of the poli-sci people and history people have taken languages. Now that I'm doing a PhD, I left a job as a professional engineer to do this. I don't necessarily want to take all those credit hours that aren't paid for and contributing to my PhD to do a foreign language. So, I'm actually, I'm interested in studying construction engineering. I'm interested in doing build, operate, transfer projects and contracting with China. Chinese is a hard language. I figure as I continue through this, I'll learn it. But so how's that work out for things like that? Is it just kind of like a no-go because it's just not how the programs are usually structured?
This is one of the difficulties that we run into with engineering students, people in the science and technology fields and I mentioned that it is a priority and that we have a few applications, and this is one of the reasons why the language varies. I encourage you to look at all of the various countries. We can talk offline when I want to get together with some of your engineering colleagues about potential countries that I think would be suitable. Obviously, countries that speak English, there are a number of them that you could apply to, but if China is what you're really focused on, there are also, I think, opportunities in countries like that for people that don't have a Chinese language background. Working with program managers, meeting them on the right sort of focus group.
I guess most of the people that I've been interacting with and working with, I know we're supposed to be out there amongst the community, but I can't network about 1.3 billion, and most that, I'd be in circles with speak English.
And that's something that you would kind of state in your project, is that your day-to-day interactions are going to be with individuals that speak English, and so you'll be able to fulfill your project by not having a strong control of the language. But definitely want to get in touch with the program manager. That's not like the default answer. It depends, and you want to get in touch with the program manager. But in my defense, I stayed out of the generalist at the beginning.
A couple of years ago, we had a Fullbright scholar in Germany. He was